So there I was, in the middle of the store, in heels that weren't mine, and an ID that I'd stolen. A week later, I'd be in a bathtub feeling my insides twist inside out and flowing straight down the drain. It was the summer of 2018. I was a little anxious around the edges, but mostly carefree. I was in a relationship with a man no one approved of. Maybe it was because he was a little older. Maybe it was because I spent all my time with him. Or maybe it was because they saw him as a bad influence. Either way, he was moving interstate for work, so I decided now would be a good time to fix some of my relationships. Convince my friends, family that he wasn't as bad as they thought. At least, that was the plan, before I found out I was pregnant. It hit me like a train. I couldn't even hold the pregnancy test. My hands were shaking so hard. This was every girl's worst nightmare. And I don't know, at the time, it felt worse for me because no one could know. I was all alone. And I can't tell you how bad it could get if anyone found out. But I can tell you that it would involve the police and lawyers. And even if everyone supported us, I still couldn't carry this life. And based on my math, I couldn't even be more than 8 weeks along. The clock was ticking, and so I decided to get rid of it. Here was some good news. I could take something for it. Unlike the surgical option, this way I could get a one-and-done injection or something I could take at home, something painless, and most importantly, private. The bad news, though, was that almost all methods, at least the safe ones, they're only effective for pregnancies under 11 weeks. I was already around 9 weeks, and so time was running out. The longer I waited, the less likely I could do it safely, and the more likely someone would find out. Now, I knew they sold what I needed at the pharmacy, and so my plan was to steal them. The only problem was that there was always a security guard at the door who checked our bags and receipts. So that brings us to plan B. Step 1, put on a ton of makeup. Step 2, grabbing what cash I had saved. And step 3, me stealing. Not the pills, but my sister's ID. I was going to impersonate my older sister. I remember walking into the pharmacy past the guard at the door and heading straight to the pregnancy aisle. Walking past all that baby food, diapers, and toys, it was kind of surreal to see what my life could have looked like if I didn't interfere. When I finally found what I came here for, I couldn't believe how expensive they were. I even had to check if I had enough money with me. I remember thinking, maybe I should just go with my original plan? But I must have looked pretty sketchy though, because the very same guard was coming my way. So I quickly scanned my choices, grabbed the cheapest one, and paid. As soon as I got home, I slipped my sister's ID back into her closet and locked myself in my room as I studied the packet. But to my surprise, it wasn't going as quick as I'd hoped. According to the box, based on how far along I was, it would take anywhere from 1 to 6 hours from when I took it to when everything came out, like a period. What this meant was I couldn't do it at home, where my parents were 24/7, but I needed a clean and stress-free space. So instead of doing it that night as I planned, I waited another week when I was scheduled to babysit my cousins overnight. I would have been around 10 weeks by then, but it was a risk I had to take. Tonight was the night. No one home but me and my baby cousins at my aunt's place for at least 12 hours. I remember tucking them in and telling them not to worry if they heard any odd noises. I'd be downstairs, just watching a movie. As soon as it's lights out, I go down, lock myself in the bathroom, and take it out. At the time, I didn't even tell my boyfriend. Yes, I know it's wrong. It's selfish. I just thought that if it all went according to plan, no one would know it ever happened, and everything would go back to normal. If only. It was a waiting game now. I'd taken it, and by tomorrow morning, this whole nightmare would be over. That was my hope, right up until the moment I started feeling it. Something wasn't right. It started with cramps, as I expected, but it just kept ramping up until it felt like a blender was going off in there. It came in pulses, waves. Soon, I realized this was nothing like a period. This was pure agony. I couldn't stand. I could barely think. All I knew was that this wasn't going to be quick or painless. I climbed into the bathtub and wailed into my shirt, now wet from my sweat. At this point, part of me was still hoping the whole ordeal could be kept private, because if people knew then, what was the point? All this trouble with the fake ID, the money spent, and taking it this late would have been for nothing. But as my insides were being twisted apart and everything came gushing out, the other part of me wanted someone to burst through the door and save me. Then I heard someone try and open the door. If it had all gone like I'd hoped, I would have held the door shut, told them I've got a stomachache, and continued to let them do its thing. But instead, all I could do now was pull the shower curtain over myself as if it could hide me and my cries. Maybe it was the pain, maybe it was all the fluid I was losing, but that's when I started to get dizzy. I wasn't going to make it. The last thing I remember is hearing the door open and seeing a small thing come out. I think that was The next thing I know, I'm on a bed in a hospital. There's a nurse by my side monitoring my vitals, and as our eyes meet, "You're awake!" I wanted to know what happened. How did I get here? But all she did was smile and leave the room. Not a moment goes by before she comes back, followed by my parents. They walked over, looked at me, and as they got ready to tell me how much of a stupid disappointment I was right there, I closed my eyes. This was going to get ugly. Then, nothing. I heard nothing, just cries. I opened my eyes, looked over, and they were in tears, just happy I was alive. Yes, they think what I did was reckless and selfish, but they also apologized for not being there for me. They wanted me to know I could trust them with anything. We held each other as the doctor confirmed that what I took had caused severe damage. I was far too late along for it, and I was lucky to be alive. In fact, if I had gotten to the hospital any later, I wouldn't have made it. Wait, how did I get here? That's when my parents brought in my little cousin, Arthur, who had heard me in the bathroom, opened the door, found me unconscious, and did the only sensible thing in that house. Called the ambulance. This 4-year-old had a better sense of what was happening than me. He saved my life. And now I want to pay it forward. I want the story to be a lesson in making decisions you can only look back on and smile about. A lesson that asks, would your younger self be proud of the person you've become today?